Well, we know in Revelation chapter 6, there's a description of Christ coming at the end of that chapter. And we also see there that those who are not ready to meet Jesus are scared to death. They hide in the mountains. We are told they run to the mountains and get in the caves and dens and are crying for the rocks to fall on them. So they would literally rather die than face Jesus. So they certainly were not ready for the final crises of Christ's coming. And an important question is asked right at the end of that chapter. And the question is, for the great day of his wrath has come, the wrath of the Lamb of Jesus, and who shall be able to stand? Well, that's a very significant question. Who will be able to survive the second coming of Jesus? What kind of relationship must they have with him in order to do that? Well, the very next chapter tells us. If we look at Revelation chapter 7, what we read there is that God commissions the angels to hold back the winds of destruction, to hold back the final crises. And there's a reason for that. It says in the second verse that an angel is seen descending from the east, having the seal of the living God. Now God's glory comes from the east. So this is an angel which is coming, of course, from God's throne to this earth to prepare God's people for the final crisis. And when it says he's coming from the east, God's glory comes from the east, then what we see there is that this angel is the angel that really fulfills the prophecy in Revelation 18:1 that says the earth shall be lightened with the glory of God, which is God's character. So this angel depicts a work that must take place in the lives of God's people to make it through the final crises, which ends up or results in them reflecting the glory or character of Christ perfectly. Now, this text also says in Revelation 7 that they have the seal of the living God to do that, sealing God's people in the forehead. So the way God's people then can reflect the character of Christ is to receive the seal of God. And that's the only way they can be ready then for Christ's second coming, because that's the answer to the question at the end of chapter 6. Well, the logical question would be, how do we get the seal of God? Well, if we go over to Ephesians, the book of Ephesians, we find that Paul says there that we should not grieve the Spirit. Why? He says, because it's by the Spirit that we are sealed. So what we find here is that the work of the Holy Spirit is the key to being ready to meet Jesus. And so our next question would be then, how does that work? What kind of experience must we have with the Holy Spirit in order to receive that seal? Well, that gets back to actually the day of Pentecost, because Jesus told the disciples that even though they had been with him for 3.5 years, they had seen his ministry, they had gone out and ministered themselves. Now they were on the other side of the cross and the resurrection. They'd seen all that, but he said, you're still not ready. He says, in order for you to be empowered to do the work that I've commissioned you to do, you must receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And so he said, I want you to wait till you receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Well, they did. They prayed for 10 days, and on the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit came in great power. And one thing that's interesting to note, before they received the baptism of the Holy Spirit, not too long before this, they were scared to death by the persecution they were afraid was going to come down upon them, because the mob came and took Jesus. And it says the rest of the disciples fled for fear that the same thing would happen to them. And Peter, of course, was waiting outside the judgment hall to see what was going to take place, and he ended up denying Jesus 3 times. So they were in no condition back then to stand firm in preaching the gospel and to stand firm when persecution comes. But Jesus knew that once they were filled with the Holy Spirit, once they received the baptism of the Holy Spirit, then they would be empowered for 2 things. Empowered to be faithful to Jesus Christ no matter what persecution came. And secondly, empowered to preach the gospel to the world.